The brutal World War II staircase traps that crippled intruders instantly. Before we begin, if you're serious about understanding the hidden mechanics of warfare, fortifications and survival engineering, subscribe to After the Sirens, and leave a comment below telling us which historical defensive tactic you want analysed next. This channel exists for viewers who value depth over spectacle, and your engagement directly shapes future investigations. Staircases were never neutral ground during the Second World War. In occupied cities, fortified bunkers, resistance safe houses and last-stand defensive positions, stairwells became engineered choke points designed not merely to slow an enemy, but to maim, disable or kill within seconds. These were not theoretical defences. They were tested under real combat pressure, refined by necessity and deployed with ruthless efficiency. Understanding how staircase traps functioned requires examining how geometry, gravity and human movement were exploited in close-quarters combat. The one-minute reality that hooked soldiers and intruders alike was that once you committed to a staircase, retreat became far more dangerous than advance. World War II defenders understood this better than any military generation before them. Staircase traps were brutally effective because stairs force predictable movement. A person climbing steps is off balance, vision restricted, weapon angled awkwardly upward, and momentum committed forward. Defenders exploited this by turning vertical spaces into layered kill zones where a single mistake meant catastrophic injury. Unlike open hallways, staircases offered no lateral escape, no room to maneuver, and no visibility beyond the next step. One of the most common World War II staircase traps was the deliberately weakened step. Resistance fighters across occupied Europe removed structural supports from specific stair treads, often, the third or fourth step from the top. An intruder rushing upward would place full body weight forward, causing the step to collapse and pitching them headfirst down the stairs. The physics were simple and, devastating. A fall of even 2 meters onto stone or concrete often resulted in spinal fractures, broken necks, or concussions severe enough to render a soldier combat ineffective. These traps were silent, reusable, and nearly impossible to detect in low light. German engineers took this further in fortified structures by combining weakened steps with angled stair geometry. Staircases were intentionally steepened beyond civilian standards, increasing fall velocity. In some bunkers, defenders coated specific steps with oil or animal fat. The slip itself wasn't the weapon. The fall onto steel railings, concrete edges, or anti-personnel obstacles at the base was. Survivors often suffered compound fractures that blocked the staircase entirely, creating both a physical barrier and really a psychological one for following troops. Another widely used method involved concealed spike traps embedded into stair landings. These were not crude medieval devices. World War II spike traps were engineered from rebar, bayonets, or sharpened steel rods mounted at shin or thigh height. They were often hidden behind false walls or hinged panels that swung open when weight shifted on a pressure step. The purpose was not always to kill instantly, but to pin an intruder in place. A wounded soldier screaming on a staircase halted advances and forced rescue attempts under fire, multiplying the defensive advantage. Tripwire-activated explosive charges were also deployed on staircases, particularly in urban fighting during the later years of the war. Small charges were placed beneath steps or behind risers, designed to detonate upward. These explosions didn't collapse buildings, but, focused energy into legs and lower torsos. A single blast could amputate limbs or incapacitate multiple soldiers stacked on the stairs. Defenders understood that stairs concentrate bodies. Timing mattered. The goal was maximum effect, with minimal explosive material. Defensive forces also exploited auditory deception. Some staircases were designed to creak loudly on the first half, then remain silent near the top. This conditioned intruders into thinking they were undetected once the noise stopped. In reality, defenders waited at the silent zone, where footsteps became impossible to hear, but movement was still predictable. Ambushes at these points were devastating, often involving downward-angled firing ports that allowed defenders to engage targets without exposing themselves. One of the most psychologically crippling staircase traps involved lighting manipulation. In underground bunkers, defenders installed low-wattage lights at the base of staircases and complete darkness above. Human eyes adapt poorly when moving from light to dark. Intruders climbing upward were effectively blind for several seconds at the top landing. Those seconds were enough. WWII accounts describe defenders using blunt weapons rather than firearms to preserve ammunition and, maintain silence. These tactics weren't limited to formal military installations. Resistance safe houses use similar principles on a smaller scale. A common tactic involved loose handrails rigged to collapse under weight. When an intruder grabbed for balance after slipping, the rail detached, ensuring a fall. Others embedded nails angled downward into stair edges, invisible in low light, designed to puncture boots and destabilize movement. Applying this knowledge today is not about replication, but, understanding defensive design principles. For modern survivalists, the lesson is that vertical movement zones are inherently vulnerable. In a defensive retreat or secure structure, staircases should never be treated as neutral passageways. Control of elevation, visibility and movement commitment remains as relevant now as it was in 1944. Practically, this means recognizing that any stairway you enter during a crisis should be approached slowly, tested for stability and observed for irregular geometry. From a defensive planning perspective, it means understanding how narrow vertical passages can be controlled with minimal resources. World War II defenders didn't rely on advanced technology. They relied on physics, human behavior, and really inevitability. Staircase traps worked because they turned architecture into a weapon. They removed choice from the intruder and replaced it with consequence. Once a foot left the ground, the outcome was already decided. Understanding these methods is not about glorifying violence. It is about learning how past generations adapted environments under extreme pressure. World War II staircase traps represent a convergence of engineering, psychology, and survival instinct at its most unforgiving. If this level of historical analysis matters to you, subscribe to After the Sirens, share this video with fellow historians and preparedness enthusiasts, and, leave a comment below with the next overlooked wartime tactic you want examined. This channel exists to preserve the uncomfortable truths history often hides.